My name is Valeria, and this is the story of how the man I trusted most turned my life into a courtroom battle he never expected to lose. When Damien and I moved into our apartment, it felt like a dream stitched together from cheap curtains, secondhand furniture, and promises that sounded like forever. He told me that every home needed a foundation, and ours would be built on trust. He laughed as he carried me over the threshold and said, "This is the start of our real life, Valeria." I believed him. I always believed him. But forever ended with an empty envelope. The first of the month arrived, just like always. I went to the drawer where we kept our rent money, neatly stacked bills folded into a cream envelope. That envelope had been there every month since we signed the lease. It was our routine. It was security. But this time, when I opened the drawer, there was nothing inside. At first, I thought Damien had already paid it early. It seemed possible. But when our landlord knocked that evening, his face tight with forced patience, my heart dropped. "Valeria," he said, "I have not received your rent." Confusion twisted into fear. We had both been so careful. Every month, the envelope. Every month, the payment. What changed? When Damien came home later that night, his shirt carried a faint scent of cologne, an expensive one I had never smelled on him before. He kissed me too quickly, his lips brushing my cheek like a formality, then opened the fridge as if nothing was wrong. "The rent," I said. My voice trembled, but I forced my eyes to stay on his. "Where's the envelope?" A shadow flickered across his face. He smirked, dismissive, almost amused. "Relax, Valeria. You get worked up over everything. I'll handle it." Worked up. Two words sharpened like knives. They weren't new. Damien had said them before, whenever I asked about bills, whenever I caught him in a small inconsistency. But this time, they cut differently. Because this time, I had seen the drawer. I knew what wasn't there. The following days were a slow unraveling. Rent remained unpaid. Damien's nights grew later, his excuses thinner. His phone never left his hand. Credit card statements disappeared before I could glimpse them. He made jokes about me being too intense, about how I needed to trust him. Each joke landed heavy, designed to make me feel smaller, weaker, dependent. And then came the night that burned every shred of doubt from my mind. Damien was in the shower. His phone buzzed against the bathroom counter, the screen lighting up. I didn't mean to look. But my eyes caught the name, Serena. The preview was short. Just one line. "Last night was amazing. I love how you spoil me." Spoil. My chest tightened, my stomach churned. Spoil her? With what? The missing rent money slammed into my thoughts. That envelope had not vanished into thin air. Damien hadn't forgotten. He had redirected. He had chosen her over a roof above us both. I gripped the counter until my knuckles burned. The sound of water masked my shallow breaths. For one moment, I thought of storming into the bathroom, shoving the phone in his face, screaming the questions clawing at my throat. But I didn't. Because I knew Damien. If I confronted him now, he'd twist it, call me paranoid, emotional, dramatic. He would drown me in his practiced calm, the smirk, the charm, the very tools he used to make people doubt themselves. Not this time. This time, I would not give him the luxury of rewriting the story. This time, I would collect every message, every receipt, every lie he thought he buried. Damien spent our rent money on Serena. I would spend his reputation in court. The words echoed in my head, sharp and steady. I whispered them into the empty kitchen air like an oath. And for the first time in months, maybe years, I didn't feel afraid. Fear had no place here anymore. What replaced it was colder. Stronger. Betrayal was not the end of my story. It was the spark that would light his downfall. The morning after I read Serena's message, I woke before Damien. I sat on the edge of our bed, staring at his phone on the nightstand. My hands ached to pick it up, to scroll, to flood myself with the proof I already sensed was there. But I stopped. Because raw suspicion isn't proof. Proof is what can't be argued with, what survives charm and denial. I needed more than one message. I needed a chain strong enough to drag Damien into the light. When he stirred, he reached for me, half asleep, murmuring something about coffee. I pulled away. He didn't notice. Or maybe he did and pretended not to. Pretending was his art. That day, I watched him closer. He lingered over his phone in the kitchen, chuckling at texts he wouldn't share. He left for meetings without his laptop. His shirt smelled faintly of the same cologne, stronger now, like he had poured it on as armor. When I asked about rent again, he waved me off. I told you, Valeria, I'll handle it. Don't stress. You're always stressing. There it was again. That word. Stressing. His way of shrinking me, of making my instincts sound like defects. But while he dismissed me, I started listening harder. I listened to the gaps in his stories. The meeting ran late, except I knew the client he named was traveling abroad. Traffic was awful, except the streets he claimed were blocked had been clear when I checked the news. Serena? She's just a colleague, except no colleague signs a message with a heart. The cracks widened with every excuse. I began keeping notes in a small black journal I had once bought for recipes. Instead, it became a ledger of his lies. Dates, times, smells, words. The night he claimed to be at the gym, but his sneakers were spotless. The Saturday he swore he was helping his brother move, but his brother posted vacation photos from Miami. Every inconsistency went in the book. And then came the receipts. Literally. Damien was careless, overconfident. He left slips from restaurants crumpled in his jacket pocket. I found them when I did laundry. Wine for two. Entrees doubled. A dessert I knew he never ordered with me. Always signed with his flourish, his little loop on the D, proud even in fraud. Each receipt I photographed, storing copies on a drive he didn't know existed. By the third week, the picture was undeniable. While I pinched pennies to cover groceries, Damien wined and dined Serena. While I counted coins for bus fare, he rented cars for special evenings. And while I faced our landlord with apologies, he laughed over cocktails with another woman, using the roof over my head as his currency. It was theft dressed as romance. But I wasn't ready to confront him. Not yet. I needed someone in my corner, someone who wouldn't call me paranoid, someone who would help me shape all this rage and evidence into something sharp, something legal. So I called the only person who had never flinched from my storms, my sister Iris. We met at a small cafe downtown, one of those places where the coffee is bitter, but the booths are private. She listened without interrupting, her eyes steady as I laid out the journal, the photos, the receipts. When I finished, her hands closed around mine, firm, grounding. You're not crazy, she said. You're prepared. And that's the difference. Her words anchored me. For months, Damien had made me feel like my emotions were flaws, like my doubt was hysteria. But Iris cut through all of it with one truth. Emotions didn't blind me. They sharpened me. Valeria, she said, if he spent your rent money on her, that's not just betrayal. That's financial abuse. And you can fight it. Fight it how? I whispered. Legally, she said. You've got dates, records, proof. Let him laugh now. He won't laugh in front of a judge. The idea lit in me like a fuse. Court. Not screaming matches in the kitchen. Not accusations drowned out by his smirk. A courtroom where evidence spoke louder than charm. I walked out of that cafe with a decision hardening inside me. I wasn't just going to leave Damien. I was going to leave him exposed. But the timing had to be perfect. The strike had to land where he felt untouchable. Because men like Damien only understand consequences when they're public. And I already knew the exact place where I would shatter his mask. After that talk with Iris, I stopped doubting myself. I stopped asking if I was overreacting. Instead, I started building what I now called the ledger. It lived in a locked folder on my laptop, a place Damien never thought to check because he never cared enough to look past the surface of my life. Inside it, I organized everything by month, date, hour. My journal entries went first. Then the photos of receipts. Then screenshots of his texts to Serena, taken quietly when his phone buzzed while he showered. And then came the bank statements. Damien had insisted years ago that we open a joint account for transparency. The irony was almost laughable. All it gave me was a direct window into his betrayals. I scrolled through the charges. Dinners at rooftop restaurants, weekend stays at boutique hotels, ride shares to neighborhoods where we had no friends. The numbers told their own story, one I couldn't unsee. One week he claimed to be at a networking event, and the ledger showed $200 at a wine bar, followed by a room at a downtown inn. Another night he said he was working late, but the account showed a ride to Serena's side of town. The ledger was no longer just suspicion. It was a case file. Every time I felt the weight of shame pressing on me, whispering that maybe I should leave quietly, I opened the folder. It reminded me that this wasn't about a broken heart. It was about theft, lies, manipulation. About him treating me like an investor in a company I never wanted to fund. But I wasn't alone anymore. Iris pushed me to move carefully. Do not confront him yet, she warned. Confrontation gives him a chance to twist it, to make you emotional while he stays calm. Let the ledger talk. You just have to survive the performance. Iris knew someone who could help, a lawyer named Clara who specialized in financial disputes between couples. Meeting Clara was like stepping into a different world. She wasn't shocked. She wasn't even surprised. She had seen this pattern before, too many times. Men like Damien think charm is a shield, she said as she flipped through the files I printed. But numbers don't flirt. Receipts don't lie. This is strong. Very strong. For the first time in months, I exhaled without feeling like I was breaking. Clara explained the plan in simple, cutting sentences. We'd file for damages citing financial misconduct. With enough evidence, Damien could be forced to pay restitution. More importantly, it would all be on record, a permanent scar on the reputation he valued more than anything. You won't just walk away, Clara said. You'll walk away with the truth in your hand. The thought electrified me. Damien had built his whole image around being dependable, responsible, the man with answers. What would he be once everyone saw him as reckless, dishonest, parasitic? The answer gave me strength. But Damien was clever. Careless with money, yes, but clever with people. He knew how to spin a story, how to turn blame into sympathy. If I moved too early, he'd slip away, smiling, leaving me the one painted as bitter. So I waited. I played the part. I laughed at his jokes at dinner. I kissed him goodnight. I let him believe I was still the emotional woman he could gaslight into silence. Inside, I was steel. Every night, I refined the ledger. I added tabs. I highlighted inconsistencies. I created a timeline that could be read like a script. Because that's what it was going to be, a performance. One Damien would star in without even realizing it until the curtain dropped. The perfect moment came into focus one evening when he strutted into the apartment, grinning. Guess what? My firm is considering me for a new leadership role. They want to host a dinner to celebrate. He thought he was telling me his triumph. In truth, he had just handed me the stage. I smiled back, pretending delight, while inside my mind whispered, that's where I'll do it. That's where the ledger speaks. But fate has a way of testing even the best-laid plans. Because the closer I got to that dinner, the more Damien sensed something he couldn't name. His eyes lingered on me longer. His questions sharpened. And one night, while I slept, he reached for my laptop. When I woke to the sound of him typing in the dark, my blood turned to ice. I woke to the faint glow of my laptop screen. At first, I thought I was dreaming. But then I heard the soft tap of keys. My chest tightened. Damien was sitting at my desk, back hunched, face lit by the pale light. He was in my world, the one place he was never supposed to enter. Panic surged. My ledger. My evidence. Months of careful work could vanish with one careless click. I sat up slowly, willing my heartbeat to steady. Can't sleep? I asked, voice casual. He startled, snapping the laptop shut. Just checking email, he said too quickly. Work stuff. His tone was light, but his eyes searched mine, probing. Did he see the locked folder? Did he notice the file names? Or had I been lucky enough that the password stopped him at the gate? I swung my legs out of bed and crossed the room, masking my fear with a tired smile. Email at 2 a.m? You're worse than me. I brushed past him, gently closed the laptop, and laid my hand on it as if it were nothing more than metal and plastic. Inside, my mind screamed, "You came too close." He yawned, stretching theatrically. "You worry too much. Go back to sleep." He kissed my temple and climbed back under the covers. I waited until his breathing deepened before reopening the laptop. The folder was still locked. The password field glared at me like a sentry. Relief washed over me so hard I nearly cried. But the message was clear. I could not keep the ledger here anymore. The next morning, I called Iris. "He almost found it," I whispered. She didn't waste words. "Time to move the game pieces," she said. We transferred everything to an encrypted drive, one Damien could never touch. Clara helped me back it up in a secure cloud with legal access rights tied to her office. My work was safe again. But Damien had smelled the shift. He began watching me more closely. His smiles carried an edge, like a man rehearsing lines he no longer believed. He started asking questions he never cared about before. "What are you working on? Who are you meeting after work?" Every answer I gave felt like walking on glass. Meanwhile, the dinner approached. His firm sent formal invitations. A private dining hall, chandeliers, crystal glasses. The perfect stage. The thought of it both thrilled and terrified me. Clara refined the plan. I'd attend, sit politely through his self-congratulations, then let the ledger speak through the people who mattered most. She had already prepared documents for legal disclosure, ready to slide into the right hands. But she warned me, he'll sense something. Men like him always do. Do not flinch when he tests you. That's when he's weakest. The test came sooner than I expected. One evening, Damien poured me wine and studied me across the table. "You've been different lately," he said. Calmer. Almost smug. I forced a laugh. "Maybe I'm just proud of you. This dinner is a big deal." His eyes narrowed. "Sometimes I think you don't really believe in me." The irony almost broke me. Believe in him? I had believed so much that I let him steal from me with a smile. Now I believed in something else entirely, justice. I held his gaze. "I believe the truth always wins." He chuckled, but it was brittle. His hand tightened on the glass. "The truth can be complicated," he murmured. I smiled softly. "Not when you write it down." That night, I lay awake beside him, staring at the ceiling, knowing he suspected more than he admitted. The danger was rising. The closer I got to the dinner, the more he prowled, circling the edges of my secret. And then, 2 days before the event, I got a message from Clara. "We have a problem. Serena knows about the dinner. She plans to be there." My stomach dropped. The woman who had helped drain my life dry wanted to sit in the same room when I planned to shatter Damien's mask. The dinner wasn't going to be a battle between two people anymore. It was going to be a war with an audience. The night of the dinner arrived with a sky the color of steel. I stood before the mirror in my bedroom, fastening the clasp of a necklace I had not worn in years. My hands shook, not from fear, but from the weight of what was about to unfold. Damien had already left for the venue, eager to be the first face people saw. He thrived on arrivals, on handshakes, on the glow of admiration. I let him go early. I wanted him relaxed when the walls started to close in. But Clara's message still echoed in my mind. Serena would be there. The woman who had smiled at me at parties while sharing my partner's secrets in whispered rooms. The woman who wore perfume I had once complimented, not realizing it would cling to my clothes after he returned from business trips. I stepped into the car, clutching the small clutch bag that held a flash drive, encrypted and ready. My proof. The driver pulled away, and I pressed my palm to the cool glass of the window, whispering to myself, "Tonight, you tell the story." The venue glittered with chandeliers and golden light. Waiters in white jackets floated like shadows with trays of champagne. At the far end of the hall, Damien laughed too loudly, his arm cutting the air like a conductor. People surrounded him, drinking in his charm. For a moment, I saw the man I had once loved, the dream I had built my life on. But then, through the crowd, I saw her. Serena. She wore red silk, the kind of dress meant to be remembered. Her smile was soft, deliberate as she moved closer to Damien. He reached for her hand under the pretense of guiding her to a seat. I felt bile rise in my throat, but I forced myself to remain still, composed. Every eye in the room could become a witness, and I needed them all. Clara appeared at my side, steady and calm. "Do not let her rattle you," she whispered. Two snakes in one cage is dangerous, but remember, you are holding the key. We took our seats. I was placed across the table from Damien, the perfect vantage point. Serena slid into the chair beside him, as if she belonged there. The audacity was almost breathtaking. The speeches began. Executives praised Damien's innovation, his dedication. Applause filled the air like smoke. My pulse hammered with every clap, every word stolen from the work I had done, from the nights I had stayed awake while he drained not just my savings, but my spirit. Then Damien stood, glass raised high. To success, he declared. To loyalty. And to those who stand beside us when the climb is steep. His eyes found mine across the table, challenging, mocking. Then, deliberately, he turned and brushed his hand against Serena's arm. A ripple passed through the room. Some noticed. Most smiled politely. But I knew the moment had arrived. I reached into my bag, fingers brushing the drive. My plan was simple. During dessert, the truth would play on the screen at the front of the room. A timeline of transfers, messages, proof that Damien's success was built on betrayal. I would not need to scream. The documents would do the speaking. But just as I prepared to hand the drive to Clara, Serena leaned toward Damien, her voice carrying farther than she intended. "They have no idea, do they?" she murmured, smiling. A hush fell over the table. Forks paused midair. Eyes darted. Her slip had cracked the surface. Damien's smile faltered. He gripped his glass too tightly. My heart surged with a mix of terror and triumph. Serena had handed me the perfect opening without even realizing it. I rose slowly, my chair scraping the marble floor. All eyes turned. The chandeliers glittered above me, a spotlight I did not need but welcomed. "Actually," I said, my voice clear, steady, cutting through the silence, "I think it is time everyone knew exactly what they have no idea about." The silence after my words was heavier than stone. 100 faces stared at me, their forks frozen, their champagne glasses suspended in midair. Damien's smile cracked like glass under pressure. "Nova," he said, his voice laced with a warning, "sit down. You are embarrassing yourself." But I did not move. My heels clicked against the marble floor as I walked toward the small podium where the projector waited. Every step echoed like a drumbeat. My pulse roared, but my hands were steady. Clara rose discreetly from her seat and met me halfway. She slipped the flash drive into my palm as if we had rehearsed it 1,000 times. "This is your stage now," she whispered. I slid the drive into the waiting laptop. The screen flickered, the projector humming to life. Damien rushed forward, his hand outstretched, panic in his eyes. "Turn that off," he barked, his charm gone, stripped bare. But it was too late. The first image appeared on the screen, a bank statement showing transfers from our joint account to a name no one recognized. Serena's. Gasps rippled through the hall like wind through trees. The next slide, screenshots of messages. Damien's words glowed in the darkened room. "She will never know. You are worth more than rent money." Then another, Serena's replies, promises of weekends away, photos of hotels, receipts timestamped the same days Damien had claimed to be working late. My voice cut through the murmurs. He told me every dollar was for our future. He told me loyalty was his virtue. He told me I was the only one. Damien lunged for the laptop, but Clara blocked him with a precision that drew a few startled laughs. "Touch it," she hissed, "and every single person here will know you are afraid of the truth." Serena sat frozen, her red dress suddenly too loud in the room of whispers. She tried to smile, to smooth the edges. "This is out of context," she stammered. I turned to her, my tone razor-sharp. "Context? Then please explain why the rent money I worked for paid for your designer bags." The room erupted. Gasps. Whispers. A man from Damien's firm muttered, "This is fraud." The head of finance took out her phone, already typing. The word illegal buzzed in the air like static. Damien tried again to seize control. "You are overreacting," he shouted, voice cracking. "We can handle this privately." "No," I said, raising my chin. "You made it public the moment you spent my future on someone else. Tonight, I am taking it back." I advanced the slides once more. The final image appeared, a copy of the legal filing I had prepared with my attorney. At the bottom, my signature. Above it, the words, petition for fraud, restitution, and dissolution of joint assets. The crowd's gasp this time was not of surprise, it was recognition. They understood what it meant. Damien stood frozen, color draining from his face. Serena shifted in her seat, her hands trembling. I held the microphone, my voice calm, deliberate. Here is the truth. Damien spent our rent money on his mistress. He lied, manipulated, and stole. But tonight, it is over. His reputation will not survive the truth. And unlike him, I have the receipts. The room fell into chaos, some rising to leave, some staying to watch the fire spread. Damien shouted something I could not hear over the storm of voices. But it did not matter. The truth had already taken the stage, and it would not step down. I did not expect applause. I expected noise. I got both. Voices broke across the hall like waves in a storm. Some people stood. Some sat hard. A few stared at their plates as if they could crawl into the china and hide. I stayed at the podium. The light felt hot on my face, but my breath was steady. Damien tried to recover his charm. He lifted both hands as if he could quiet a riot with a gesture. Friends, he said, please. This is a misunderstanding. Nova has been under stress. She is making wild claims. The head of finance from his firm spoke first. Her voice was calm. The statements on that screen are not claims, she said. They are entries. We will need copies. Damien's smile trembled. Of course, he said quickly, I will provide. I raised the folder. You will not need his help, I said. Counsel has everything. A murmur rolled across the room. Someone near the back whispered, she came prepared. It sounded like respect. It sounded like relief. Serena stood, her chair scraping the floor. I did not know about the rent, she said, eyes bright and angry. He told me he was single. He told me the money was his. The room turned to Damien. He laughed, a small empty sound. You see, he said, this is a lover's quarrel. Private. Embarrassing. But private. The venue manager approached the stage with slow, careful steps. We cannot host legal disputes, she said softly. It will be brief, I replied. One last thing. I nodded toward the door. It opened. A man in a navy suit stepped in, calm as a librarian. He carried a thin envelope. His badge glinted for a moment. Damien Cole, he asked. Damien froze. Who are you? Process server, the man said. He held out the envelope. You have been served. A gasp pealed through the audience. Someone clapped a hand over her mouth. Serena sat down again as if her knees had failed her. Damien did not take the envelope. He backed away. You cannot serve me here, he said, rage and panic sharing the same breath. The server remained polite. I can serve you anywhere I can see you, he said gently. He set the envelope on the table at Damien's elbow. Service complete. Damien swore under his breath. He reached for the envelope and then stopped as if it were hot. Please leave, the venue manager said to him, firmer now. You are disturbing the event. This is my event, he snapped. No, I said. It is mine now. The projector still hummed. The last slide glowed on the wall. Fraud. Restitution. Dissolution. The words were not loud, but they filled the room. A senior partner from his firm stood. He did not look at me. He looked at Damien. Turn in your badge tomorrow, he said quietly. Compliance will call you in the morning. Damien stared at him. You cannot be serious. We are very serious, the partner replied. Serena rose again. She faced me, not him. I want to apologize, she said. To you. I should have checked. I did not. I chose the easy version of his story. I studied her face. I saw fear there. I saw embarrassment. I did not see malice. Take care of yourself, I said. And check everything. Her shoulders sagged. She nodded and sat. Damien turned to the crowd and tried one last tactic. You all know me, he said, voice leaking from charm into fury. I am a good man. I made mistakes, but I am a good man. The head of finance shook her head. Good men do not steal from rent. The room shifted with that single sentence. It was an old truth. It was new here. He lunged toward the podium. Clara stepped between us. So did the venue manager. So did the senior partner. Damien stopped. His breath came fast. His eyes were bright with a heat that no longer moved anyone. My hands stayed at my sides. Walk away, I said. There is nothing here for you. He looked at the envelope. He looked at the screen. He looked at the people who had once clapped for him. He took a step back. Then another. He picked up the envelope with 2 fingers, as if it might stain him, and shoved it into his jacket. Enjoy your little victory, he spat. It will not last. It already has, I said. He left. The doors swung behind him and thudded shut. The sound rang like a period at the end of a long sentence. I stood still for a count of 10. The room exhaled. A woman near the front raised her glass toward me. To truth, she said. I did not drink. I was not ready to celebrate. I walked to the laptop and closed the file with quiet hands. I turned off the projector. The wall went blank. The heat from the lamp drifted across my fingers. It felt like the last warm breath of something finally ending. People began to approach. Some thanked me. Some apologized for not seeing sooner. Some simply squeezed my arm. I listened. I nodded. I did not break. Clara stayed near my shoulder. You did it, she whispered. I did the necessary thing, I said. The senior partner asked for copies of everything. I handed him a drive from the folder. Read it all, I said. Do not pretend this is only personal. He used company time. He used company access. We will handle it, he said. His voice was steady. His eyes were not kind. They were professional. It was enough. The venue manager cleared her throat. Would you like to keep the room for the hour? She asked. We can bring coffee. I almost said no. Then I looked at the women scattered across the tables. Some were still sitting. Some were standing in small clusters, faces lit with something fierce and careful. They looked like people learning how to breathe new air. Yes, I said. Coffee would be good. She nodded and moved away. I picked up the microphone one last time. Thank you for staying, I said. Tonight was not about drama. It was about proof. If you need a ride home, come see me. If you need copies of the packet, see counsel. If you need to speak with me, I will be here. I set the mic down. The hum of conversation swelled again, smaller now, calmer. The room loosened. The projector cooled. The air shifted. Then my phone buzzed. A new message. The sender was unknown. The text was short. You think this is over? It is not. I stared at the screen. The number was blocked. The hall felt colder. Clara saw my face. What is it? She asked. I turned the phone so she could read. Her eyes narrowed. Do not answer, she said. I did not. I put the phone face down on the podium. I looked at the closed doors. I listened to the murmur of the room that now felt safer than it had a half hour before. The coffee arrived on a silver tray. Cups clinked. The scent of something warm and simple washed across the hall. I wrapped my hands around a cup and let the heat sink in. And as I lifted it, the doors opened again. The doors opened slowly, not with Damien's fury, but with deliberate weight. For one heartbeat, the entire hall held its breath. Then the figure stepped inside. It was not Damien. It was Mr. Hartwell, the compliance officer from Damien's firm. A quiet man, known for spreadsheets and silence. His presence here meant more than any shouted accusation. He scanned the room, his eyes settling on me. He walked forward, carrying a thin folder that looked heavier than iron. MS. Everly, he said, his voice calm. May we speak? Every eye turned to us. Yes, I said, steady. He nodded toward the corner. Clara followed, uninvited but unwavering. We sat at a table that still smelled of champagne and frosting. I received the packet from counsel, Hartwell began. The documentation is thorough. Damien's conduct breaches both internal policy and external compliance standards. He tapped the folder. There will be hearings. Possibly more. Clara crossed her arms. He has already threatened her tonight. Hartwell's brow furrowed. Threatened. I showed him my phone, the blocked number, the message. You think this is over. It is not. Hartwell read it twice. Do not reply. We will document this too. If further messages arrive, forward them to me. Will it stop him? I asked. Hartwell shook his head slowly. Men like Damien rarely stop themselves. But the system can stop them if given enough weight. You have given us weight. His words were not comfort, but they were solid. That was enough. We returned to the hall. People were calmer now, sipping coffee, speaking in lowered voices. The storm had passed, but the air still buzzed with electricity. One of Damien's former colleagues approached me. She was younger than me, her eyes wide, her hands fidgeting. I need to tell you something, she whispered. Clara glanced at me, then at the woman. Go on, I said. He used my login once, she confessed. Said his was locked. He told me not to mention it. But later I saw transactions that I knew weren't mine. I was afraid to say anything. Her voice broke. I thought if I spoke up, I would be ruined. But you, she swallowed, you made me believe I can. I touched her hand gently. You are not ruined. You are free now. Speak to Hartwell tomorrow. Tell him everything. She nodded, tears slipping down her cheeks, but relief flickered behind them. That was the first aftershock. Not Damien's rage, not Serena's shame, not even the legal folder. It was the voices that had been silent finding their strength. But the night was not over. As the coffee cooled and conversations dimmed, a staff member hurried to the stage. She looked nervous, eyes darting toward me. She whispered something to the venue manager. The manager stiffened, then walked quickly toward our table. There is a man outside, she said quietly. He is demanding to come back in. Security has stopped him. But he insists he will not leave until he speaks to you. Clara's jaw tightened. It is Damien. The room grew tense again. People looked toward the doors as if they could feel his shadow pressing through the wood. I rose slowly, my chair scraping against the floor. Bring him in, I said. Clara grabbed my arm. Are you sure? Yes, I said. If he wants an audience, I will give him one. But this time, the story will not belong to him. The manager hesitated, then nodded to the staff. The doors creaked open once more, and Damien walked back into the hall. The morning after the court hearing, I woke up before the alarm. My apartment was quiet, the kind of quiet that feels earned, not empty. For months, I had lived with the constant hum of anxiety. Every email, every bill, every glance at my bank account carried his shadow. That morning, the silence belonged to me. I brewed coffee and sat at the table with the court documents still in their folder. They were dry pages, official language stamped and signed, but to me they looked like freedom. The judge had not just ruled on the money. She had acknowledged the pattern, the betrayal, the way he siphoned my stability to fund another life. That recognition mattered more than the numbers. It was proof I had not imagined it. My phone buzzed. A message from my friend Clara. Saw the article. You were brilliant. Proud of you. Article? My hands shook as I searched online. There it was, our local paper, a short piece about financial deception and relationships, quoting my case without names but with enough detail for anyone close to us to recognize. The headline read, Judge rules against man who misused partner's savings. I exhaled, half in relief, half in nerves. People would talk. They already were. By noon, I had 3 voicemails. One from a coworker who had always looked at me with quiet sympathy. She said, you did not deserve any of that. If you ever need backup, I am here. Another from my landlord. Glad you stood up for yourself. Rent stability is important. Do not worry, you are safe here. And the last one from him. His voice, once so smooth, sounded frayed. Lena, we do not have to let this get uglier. You made your point. Everyone knows. Can we at least talk? I deleted it without replaying. He had drained me of so many resources already: time, trust, hope. He would not take my mornings too. That afternoon, I met Clara at a cafe. She slid into the chair opposite me with eyes full of fire. Do you realize what you did? She asked. I survived, I said. No. You did more. You showed that women do not have to stay quiet when partners gamble with their lives. You gave a roadmap. Her words sank into me like sunlight. For the first time, I began to understand that my story was not just mine. It was a mirror, a warning, maybe even a beacon for others trapped in similar lies. But the relief came with weight. Online, I saw whispers on his social media, some friends defending him, some distancing themselves, some silent. One comment read, "Guess charm does not pay the bills after all." Another, "She deserved better." I closed the app. I had no desire to drown in strangers' judgments, even if they leaned in my favor. That evening, I went for a walk past the courthouse. The building looked ordinary in daylight, but to me it shimmered with significance. It was the place where truth had been spoken without him twisting it into a joke or a story. On the steps, I saw two women talking quietly. One recognized me and smiled. She whispered something to the other, who nodded. They did not approach, but their acknowledgement felt like a silent cheer. When I reached home, another message waited on my phone. This one was not from him, but from his so-called other woman. Her voice was low, almost broken. I had no idea. I thought he was single. "I am sorry for what he put us both through." I sat with that message a long time. It would have been easy to hate her, to make her the villain of my story. But she was a victim too. He had played us both. Before bed, I wrote in my journal, "He drained my savings." I drained his reputation. But what I gained was more than that. I gained myself back. As I closed the notebook, I realized the revenge was not just about exposing him. It was about reclaiming the parts of me that had gone dim under his shadow. And tomorrow, I would step fully into that light. The week after the verdict, I noticed something strange about my mornings. I no longer woke up rehearsing arguments in my head. I no longer checked my account 3 times before buying groceries. I no longer braced for the sound of his key in the lock, even though he had not lived here for weeks. Peace is quiet, but it is not empty. It fills the spaces lies once crowded. On Monday, I went back to work. My desk looked the same, but the way people looked at me had shifted. There was no pity, no whispered gossip. Only nods. One coworker left a note, "Proud of you." Another brought me coffee and said nothing more. Sometimes silence says everything. By Wednesday, I received an email from a local women's advocacy group. They had read about the case and wanted me to speak at one of their workshops. "Your story can remind others that legal systems are not always perfect, but they can be used," the organizer wrote. I said yes. Not because I liked speaking, but because I had learned the danger of silence. That Saturday, I stood in a room of women and a few men who had bruises you could see and others you could not. I told them about the slow realization, the missing money, the confrontation, the courtroom. I told them about shaking as I read documents aloud. And then I told them about waking up the next morning with my silence finally broken. When I finished, one woman raised her hand. "What did it cost you?" she asked. I thought about it. My savings, my trust, my years of patience. "It cost me pieces of myself," I said. "But I got them back, and I am not handing them over again." The room was quiet. Then applause rose, not thunderous, but steady, like rain falling on thirsty ground. That night, I walked home under a sky clear enough to show stars. I thought about him. His reputation was gone, not because I slandered him, but because truth finally had the microphone. He had moved back to his parents' house in another town. I heard he told people he was rebuilding. Maybe he was. That part is no longer mine to carry. What is mine is this: I no longer feel small when I stand in a room. I no longer doubt my instincts when they whisper. I no longer confuse loyalty with silence. On Sunday, I hosted Clara and 2 other friends for dinner. We ate pasta, drank wine, and laughed in the way you can only laugh when no one at the table is pretending. Before they left, Clara hugged me and whispered, "You are free now." Free. Such a simple word. Such a heavy gift. Later, I sat alone and opened my journal. I wrote the sentence that had lived in me since the day I discovered the missing money. "He spent our rent money on her." I spent his reputation in court. I underlined it once. Then I wrote another line beneath, "And I spent my future on me." Now, I want to speak directly to you, the person listening. Maybe you have been told you are dramatic for noticing details. Maybe someone has twisted your trust into their playground. Maybe you feel small because someone benefits from your silence. Listen to me. You are not small. You are not dramatic. And you are not alone. Revenge does not always look like screaming or smashing plates. Sometimes it looks like paperwork filed on time. Sometimes it looks like walking into court with your head high. Sometimes it looks like telling the truth so calmly that lies collapse under their own weight. If this story reaches you at the right time, I want you to take one step this week. Write down what you know. Tell one friend you trust. Remind yourself that silence is not the same as peace. I am Lena, and this was my story. If you want to hear more stories of betrayal turned into power, stay with me. There are countless ways truth can win, and every one of them matters. Because in the end, lies are heavy. But truth? Truth always travels lighter.